Greetings, peace, and love, sports fans, in particular the beloved Chicago Bears, of course. My name is Shad by government. I go by Shad from the South Side in most sports circles. This is not a drill. This is the Bear Details podcast, and I am your host. The agenda of each episode, quite frankly, is to give you my personal insights in terms of the eyes or perspective of a lifelong fan of the game. Because my own personal experiences offer something to be able to provide more of a newer perspective to the table in terms of followers of the Bears. Voila, the podcast. I mean, the content's pretty basic, straightforward, focusing primary areas that you're going to hear in a lot of different areas, locally or nationally, whether it's stats and game decisions, tactics, motivations, performance metrics, analytics. All of that's just to explain my perspective in terms of each matchup for each game, each week, in terms of the results, which is likely a Bears dub. Real quick, before I get into the normal podcast procedures, I want to touch on what happened since last Thanksgiving. Of course, the Bears took another L, which is 10 in a row. This one national televised on Turkey Day against a division team again, and you ran the full gauntlet. Got rid of a head coach. President of the football operations, or in terms of the team, Kevin Warren, decided to put on his puffy jacket and his puffy shirt, stroke his chest, to visually express to the public the unruffled emotions that ownership feels in terms of the current status of the team, which gave the thumbs up for something that they hadn't done in the history of their organization, which fired a head coach during the proceeding of a normal season. It was warranted. This is the losingest coach that this team has ever had or employed, by far. Been some bad ones. But dude had records where he wasn't winning road games on Sundays, and that's where football's played. Publicly, we've never heard teams speak about a coach or coaching in the capacity that was spoke about in this team over the last 2 years. Look at the basics or the roots of the spectrum in terms of pantheon. You want to take the North Rand Post general manager, 3 years, 30 losses, bare minimum. Even if you're rebuilding through the draft, your core team has not found the taste of victory yet. Might have good ingredients, but the broth's still bad. With that being the case, I'd like to go into the main focuses in terms of the matchup. We want to keep it football. All I'm going to tell you is that the hot seat is already there. General manager has already had an understanding based on the visuals as well as the verbal cues that you heard from last week's performance. Pressure is on him in terms of the fourth year coming up. If he is retained as general manager, which Kevin Warren said he would be, he'll be able to select his coach, and if the interim, Thomas Brown, is the successor to Eberflus, then you'll see a successful last 4 to 5 weeks as a Bears fan, leading to a very exciting offseason and a very interesting and an urgent one for Ryan Post, because it's the final phase of his vision 4 years into the build. I'm going to make an entire podcast based on what I think his build vision should be. If I'm right with it, it makes perfect sense why we're where we're at. But getting back to the script, getting back to the books, motivations, first and foremost. Let's start with the Niners. Home team, trying to salvage what they can in terms of keeping themselves at the top pantheon to get into the playoffs. The only way that happens is if they win the division. Seattle looks like they got some chest this year. The roster's been deep enough for them to sustain some winning. Arizona's kind of fizzled out. Even with the high excel play of their offense, you've seen some vulnerabilities on their defensive side of the ball. The Niners got anything left in terms of championship DNA. The pressure on their head coach is right there as well, but he's got roots to prove it. Super Bowl appearances. questionable in-game manager, but Kyle Shanahan has led a formidable team over the last 5 years. They are depleted defensively and offensively due to injuries, but they're motivated to maintain themselves over the last 5 weeks, just giving themselves a shot to be on the last week of the season to play for the division. Talking about the motivations for the road team, the Bears coming in. A wounded bear, an embarrassed bear. That could be something embarrassing or it could be something very dangerous. The profile of that dangerous component mixed with Thomas Brown's philosophy as well as what he presents in terms of his demeanor could be some nasty looking stuff on the bay in terms of the road team coming in with a lot on their chest and with nothing to prove, with some very new details in terms of how they're going to construct their team or utilize their components. Let's get into the nooks and to the X and O's. Of course, that's one of the most main components of the games. That's what we want to keep the focus. Offensive advantages. You could look at the sheet. This week's matchup does not correlate to over how the projections have been throughout the season. If you look at every statistical category offensively, it's a landslide. Top 10 offense with the Niners, led by Deebo Samuel and George Kittle in the passing game. And now they're on their third running back because of injury. But historically, Kyle Shanahan has not let that stop him before. He's gotten to a Super Bowl with his third running back before. I remember a game against Arizona right before halftime where a no-name third-string running back took a 60-yard touchdown to the house on his defense. Stopping the run has been a problem all season. Offensively, got to respect what the Niners bring to the table in terms of on paper and what to expect. The Bears, even with the implementation of Thomas Brown being the play caller and the new OC, you've seen some progress, but 21's been their cap. It's like we ain't shooting basketball. We're not playing 21 on the Bucks. Right now, we need this offense to hit over that threshold to actually start seeing some true progress to be able to win games. They have performed well enough to win in the previous weeks, even with the hiccups of the coach. But to put teams away and to actually perform at the level that you're supposed to, they've been leaving points on the board. One of the optimistic points that you can look at offensively for the Bears is they don't turn the ball over. But quarterback getting hit more than anybody in the league. Bottom third in the run game. Still trying to figure it out in terms of pass game. Third down. Both sides of the ball. Advantage Niners. Defensive advantage. You look at the numbers. This is an even matchup ultimately when you look at the teams, when you look at the books. Niners stingy in terms of yardage and points. Same thing with the Bears, but the Bears are elite at it. 50 points less than what the Niners are giving up. The last several weeks, the Niners have not been the same defense. And I know Bosa's not been there, and defense has been injured. But they have taken a dramatic drop back from a tier 1 or 2 defense down to like a tier 3 defense. And some of that's predicated on the offensive ineptitude on the other side of the ball, which has left that defense exposed. And they have had a tough portion of the schedule over the last 4 weeks. So I ain't going to look at it from the standpoint that this ain't a real unit with real players. But attrition does tell the truth. Out of their top 10 people on defense, they're missing 5. That adds up. Looking at the Bears, new play caller, an entire new motivation for this unit. Eric Washington coming in as a new defensive coordinator, even though he was a coordinator on the Eberflus, he really wasn't doing much. Go back to preseason, he was calling plays. I expect a way more aggressive defense. They're right in the middle of the pack in terms of sacks, 30 on the season. We want to see that over the next 5 weeks increase week to week. Not sure where it's going to come from, but if it's schematic based, I expect a lot more pressure from the secondary, which allows the Bears to be aggressive in the front 7. I'm hoping to see biscuits. Advantage defense on the Bears. Special teams. Yet again, I'm going to refuse to acknowledge this unit until they actually execute something on a level that's called special. This would be a great and a unique opportunity for them to get something going. Hightower hasn't done anything in terms of a fake this year. I would say this would be a great week for it. If your punter wants to put the ball in between the 5s all game long, if they do have to punt, this should be a great game for it. If you want to do something in terms of kicking, screw extra points. I like 2 points this week. Show some cojones. Anyway, looking what the numbers tell you by the books, pretty much it's an advantage for the 49ers, and it's hard to slice it. Vegas going to tell you that. The numbers going to tell you that. The records tell you that. And it's very difficult if you watch the Bears over the last 10 games to say that you're going to predict them to beat anyone. But sometimes numbers lie. And even with the streaks being at 10, you got to look at what the situation is within the matchup. The Niners got 5 games. Bears will be their toughest opponent of their last 5. I can see them taking an L. Matter of fact, I can know that they're going to take an L, primarily because of the circumstances of Chicago coming in with nothing to lose. On the road, 3 o'clock game on the Smitty, going to the West Coast. That's back where Caleb was comfy. Let the kid have a breakout game. You know who else came out from the West Coast? The number 9 draft pick. Thomas Brown's going to dial up 15 this week and get him on some special highlights this week. Love to see him get 100 this week. If that's the case, then we look at a situation where the Bears got upset on their mind. And if that's the case, Poe still got those lucky dice. He ain't crapped out yet. If that's the case, load it up 24-19 Bears. Hope I'm right. If so, we'll talk next week. Podcast post-game. Again, this is the Bear Details Podcast. It's your boy Shad from the South Side. Y'all be good.